तुम लोग ना अभी started. Yes. Ready? Okay. So students, we were studying the composition of the Constituent Assembly. So as we discussed earlier, the strength of Constituent Assembly was set at 389, out of which 296 seats were to be allotted to the British India and 93 seats were to be to the princely states. Now, how the members of this Constituent Assembly were elected? Were they elected directly by the people or indirectly? That is the question. And one thing that must be remembered is the representatives of the Constituent Assembly were elected by the members of provincial legislative assemblies. If you remember, before independence, there were provinces in India, and the provinces were having their own legislative assemblies who were tasked with making laws with the local issues, local matters. And those provincial legislative assemblies elected the members of the Constituent Assembly. So this was about those territories which was under the control of British. But what about princely states? The members of princely states were not to be elected, rather to be nominated by the respective princely states. And this is how the Constituent Assembly becomes partly nominated and partly elected body. And that too not directly elected, but indirectly elected, because people didn't directly elect these members of Constituent Assembly. It is the provincial legislative councils who elected the members of the Constituent Assembly. So this was about composition of the Constituent Assembly. Moving on, we will see when the election took place, you will see the Indian National Congress won the highest number of seats, that is 208 in the Constituent Assembly, and 73 seats were won by the Muslim League. Right? Even though the Muslim League first they initially did not attend the Constituent Assembly, but they had 73 number of members in the Constituent Assembly. See, as we talked earlier as well, that the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly was held at 9 December 1946, and which was attended by 211 211 members. Okay? And Dr. Sachindanand Sinha, if you remember, that Dr. Sachindranath Sinha was elected as the temporary president of the assembly. See, this question is very important. You might get a question on who was the temporary president of the first temporary president of the Constituent Assembly. Rather than asking the first president of Constituent Assembly, they might ask you the temporary president of Constituent Assembly. So in this case, you must remember that it is Dr. Sachidananda Sinha who was elected as a temporary president of the Constituent Assembly. And later on, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, as we all know, elected as a president of Constituent Assembly. Apart from president of Constituent Assembly, we had two vice presidents of the assembly. One was H.C. Mukherjee and the another was V.T. Krishnamachari. V.T. Krishnamachari, right? This is factual things you should remember. Then on December 13, 1946, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru moved the historic objectives resolution. It laid down the fundamentals and the philosophy of the constitutional structure. See, what is objectives resolution? Which the Jawaharlal Nehru moved in the Constituent Assembly. Right. This is very important, and NDA already had asked a question on Constituent Assembly and specifically on the objectives resolution. Right. I will show you that question later on. But first of all, you need to know what is objectives resolution. See, objective resolution specifies the objectives and the philosophies of the Constitution of India. Right. That what kind of structure or what kind of constitution will be of India. Right. So for that purpose, objective resolution was moved, and the modified version of this objective resolution only, is our preamble today. So if I were to list the key objectives of objective resolution, you can see India is proclaimed as an independent sovereign republic. See, mark these words: independent, sovereign, and republic. Today's preamble has two more words. What are those more words? Just comment it. India shall be union of states and territories. See, it shows the nature of polity of India, that what kind of polity India will be. That is union of states. See, instead of federation of states, we have used the word union of states. Why that so? We will see that. All powers and authority of sovereign independent India are derived from the people. So in any democratic setup or republic setup, you see the power ultimately comes from the people. People are the source of power, right? Social, economic, and political justice shall be guaranteed to the people of India, right? The constitution makers have guaranteed the social, economic, and political justice to all the people of India without any discrimination. Apart from that, equality of status and of opportunity. So this is very important. That means in India, after independence, everyone shall have equal status. There will be no high status, low status. There, all people will be treated equally, irrespective of their status, gender, race, place of birth, etc. Right? An adequate safeguard shall be provided for minorities, backward and tribal areas, and depressed and other backward classes. So in short, all the vulnerable sections of the society were guaranteed the safeguards from the constitution. So this is what we have objective resolution moved by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru on 13 December 1946, and the modified version of this objective resolution forms today's preamble. That means the preamble of present constitution of India, and this resolution was unanimously adopted by the Constituent Assembly on January 22, 1947. Okay, and this is what the preamble of present constitution is all about. You can see many words and statements are similar to of that of the objective resolution. No wonder, because it is the modified version of objective resolution itself, right? So if you remember preamble, see, preamble is something which we see, on a daily basis. Every book has this preamble, but we don't go into the depth of preamble, right? We need, before I go into the Constitution of India, before we dive into the details of the Constitution of India, first we need to understand the nature of the Constitution of India. And how will we understand the nature of Constitution of India? That is from the preamble, because preamble is kind of a blueprint, or you can say an essence of the entire Constitution. It is a short or a brief form of entire Constitution, and the entire Constitution later on go into elaborating the preamble itself. So preamble just indicates the nature of our philosophy and the fundamentals of our constitution, right? So we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a, here the important words are sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic. See, sovereign means free from any external control or free from any external pressure. That means there is no third party interference in India's policy making. India's parliament is sovereign to make its own decisions and to make its own policies. No one will pressure or interfere in the policy making process of Indian parliament. That is how we call ourselves as sovereign. In short, independent to take our own decisions. After sovereign, we come across the word that is socialist. See, socialist word is like, if you translate it into Hindi, it is Samajwad. What is Samajwad? See, it has different connotations. It has social connotation, political connotation, economic connotation. But by and large, if you see Indian socialism, this is a mixed model where capitalism and socialism exist together. That means private properties and the public property exist side by side. So if you see in Indian context, some of the properties are owned by the government of India, and many other properties, or you can say resources or organizations, they are private. So in India, private organization or institution coexist with the public institution, and that is nothing but a mixed kind of model of that India has adopted. Right? This is sometimes also known as democratic socialism, and that is what we have adopted in our constitution. However, the word socialist was not there in the original constitution, but we added this word later on by way of 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, by way of 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. In this year, the socialist word was added into the preamble. It means earlier the word socialist was not part of the preamble. Then after socialist, we come across the word secular. So secular, see, there is no universal definition of secularism, but we can compare two type of secularisms. For example, we have a Western secularism and we have an Indian secularism. If you go to the depth of Western secularism, there you will see complete separation of power. Complete separation. Separation of what? Separation of religion and state. Separation of religion and state. Right? That means the state won't interfere in the religious matter, and the religion won't interfere in the state. That means the religion is a private matter and the state is a public matter. So that is how the Western countries define their term of secularism. But as long as India is concerned, there is no separation of religion from state. But however, the India or the government or the state need to make sure that every religion is treated equally, right? Equal importance is given to every religion. That is Indian secularism. So in short, you have to remember one thing: the difference between Western secularism and Indian secularism. This kind of concepts are important not only from your written examination perspective, but also from your SSB perspective. Understood? So Western secularism and Indian secularism. Western secularism, if you see, Western secularism has separation of religion and state. Sometimes they also call it separation of church and the state, right? But in case of India, it is not separation of religion and state, but the state has to make sure that every religion is treated equally. That is Indian secularism, the meaning of Indian secularism. Then we come across the word democratic and republic. Now, many students, are very found of confused between these two terminologies, democratic and republic. So sometimes they think whether there is any difference between democracy and republic, or they are the same things. See, as such, if you go technically, they are two different things. However, there are certain common things between both. For example, in both the setup, you can say the power comes from the people. That means people are the ultimate authority of the power. But however, there is a difference. If whenever we talk about democracy, whenever we talk about democracy, what comes to our mind? What is democracy? There is a very usual definition of democracy, by the way. That is, it is a government setup of the people, by the people, for the people, right? But that's not uh, that simple, that just saying ki of the people, by the people, for the people, the definition of democracy is complete. Democracy is much beyond that. Apart from election, there are other things which ensures democracy. For example, separation of power. Separation of power. Separation of power between whom? Between the legislative, executive, and the judiciary. The job of legislative is to make laws, and the job of executive is to implement the laws, and job of the judiciary is to interpret those laws. That whether those laws made by the legislative and implemented by the executive are in accordance with the constitution or not. That is the job of judiciary, right? That means there is a separation of power in our political setup. By the way, these three organs are also known as pillars of democracy: the legislative, executive, and the judiciary. One is tasked with making laws, another body is tasked with implementing those laws, and the third one is tasked with interpreting or judging those laws as per the constitution, right? That is the main concept, that is the essence of democracy, where you have separation of power, which you won't see in dictatorships, where the lawmaking body, implementing body, and the judging body is same. No, that is not seen in the dictatorships. That's what makes democracy different, right? Apart from that, you will have certain other rights, like for example, you can enjoy fundamental rights, any other rights in case of democracy which are denied in the other kind of setups. So democracy is a very broader term, where you will see elections, separation of powers, enjoyment of your fundamental rights, etc., right? But when we talk about republic, see, republic is a very specific thing. Republic may, if you see, it talks about head of the state. In democracy, we'll talk about entire government setup, right from panchayat till parliament. Every government institution, or you can say government body, is elected by the people. It is of the people, by the people, for the people. But when we talk about republic, to be more specific, it is about head of the state only. Head of the state. So whichever countries, whichever democracies have this setup that their head of the state will be elected, those countries will be known as a republic. And if the head of the state is not elected, That means if it is hereditary, then they will not be called as republic. Instead, they will be called as monarchy. Is that very clear? So I'll give you examples of this. So India is both democratic and republic. India is both democratic and republic because we have entire government set up as elected by the people, frequent elections, guarantee of fundamental rights, separation of powers, etc. There is democracy indeed, but apart from democracy, along with democracy, we also have republic because our head of the state. That means now who is our head of the state? Many students tell me it is prime minister. Okay, so which is not. So prime minister is not head of the state. Prime minister is head of the government. Okay, and head of the state is president of India. Right now, how are whether our president of India elected or not? That is the question. Yes, India's head of the state. That means president is elected, but directly or indirectly? Indirectly, yes. So our head of the state is elected indirectly, but doesn't matter. They want head of the state elected only. See, in order to call in order to call it a republic, you have a head of the state elected, no matter if it is elected directly or indirectly. If it is elected, then it is republic. If it is not elected, then it is monarchy. For example, in India, president is elected, even though he is elected indirectly, but elected, right? So that's why India is known as republic. But if the same case, if you see in UK head of the state, their head of the state is either the queen or the king. Right now, there is a King Charles III. He is the head of the state in UK, and he is not elected. He is hereditary. He is hereditary, right? So that's why UK cannot be called as republic, even though they are democracy, but they are not republic, right? They do have parliament, elections, etc., separation of powers, fundamental rights, everything they have. That means they do have a democratic setup, but they don't fall under the category of republic because their head of the state is not elected. Instead, it is hereditary, and that's why UK is democracy but not republic, right? And apart from UK, you have other examples, for example, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Even these countries are also democracy, but they are not republic because even their head of the state is also a monarch, right? So if not republic, then what you call it? You will call it as monarchy. You will call it as monarchy. Okay, so that is what the meaning of democracy and republic. So if I give you two statements, the first is whether every democracy is republic, and the second statement whether every republic is democracy, which statement you think is correct? Every democracy is republic. If you see, every democracy is republic. If this statement, I ask you whether it is correct or incorrect, I just told you that every democracy is not republic because if you see UK, Canada, Australia, they all are democracies, but they are not republic. So every democracy cannot be called as republic. But however, the vice versa is true. Every republic is democracy. This is true because wherever you have republic set up, indeed that country is democracy, right? So every republic is democracy, but every democracy is not republic. That has to be very crystal clear in your mind. Okay, students, apart from these keywords, we also come across the words like justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. So one by one we'll see that. We will witness all this concept later on in various chapters of the constitution. For example, when we go into the fundamental rights chapter, there you will see a certain type of justice you get or rights you get. Then we will move on to the direct principles of state policy. There also you will see certain kind of social justice and economic justice is provided to the people of India. So the later part of the constitution will definitely elaborate on these points, but just to give you a brief idea, that our constitution or the preamble for that matter ensures justice to everyone without any discrimination, and that too of three types, that is social justice, economic justice, and the political justice. Apart from justice, it also gives you the liberty of what? Liberty of thought, liberty of expression, faith, belief, and worship, right? All these liberties you get, and we will see these liberties whenever we will be dealing with the chapter of fundamental right. There we have this topic in detail. Then equality. Equality of what? Equality of status and opportunity. Then and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring what? Dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. Okay. By the way, before I move on, I need to tell you one thing, that the word socialist and secular and integrity, where we have the word integrity here. These are the three words which were added in the constitution later on in 1976. So this is not the words which were there in the constitution from the very beginning, right? So, and multiple times India has asked the question on these particular aspects. Before I move on, I need to tell you one thing, that preamble is, if you ask me whether preamble is a part of constitution, yes, Supreme Court has clearly stated that preamble is a part of constitution in successive various of its judgments. But whether preamble is a source of power or whether preamble is justiciable in nature, that is the main question. So even though preamble is a part of parliament, it is not a source of power, neither it is justiciable. They are one and the same thing. That means you cannot go to the court on the violation of preamble. That is just non-justiciable. If preamble were to be justiciable, then on its violation, you would have gone to the court as a making preamble as a source of power. But that is not true. Preamble is neither a source of power nor justiciable in court of laws. But indeed, it is a part of constitution, right? Yes. So if I were to show you certain questions, yes. See, these are the questions asked by NDA in various examination 2016 and 2022, and the very easy questions. Who among the following introduced the objectives resolution in the Constituent Assembly on 13 December 1946? Yes, we just saw that it is Jawaharlal Nehru who introduced the famous objectives resolution in the Constituent Assembly on 13 December 1946. The question has already been asked on the based on the preamble. Then question number 141, if you see, they ask, the word socialist was inserted into the preamble of the Constitution of India through which of the following amendment acts? Student C, yes, we just saw that it is 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, which added the word socialist. Is it socialist only? No. Also secular, also integrity. These are the words which are added in the constitution later on by way of 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Apart from this, see, there are many questions asked in this topic, not only in NDA, but in CDS, UPSC Civil Service. If you go, there are questions based on the preamble itself, right? See, last time they had asked question on socialism. Next time they asked question on what? Secular, right? Secular. And again, answer is same. 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Is that very clear? Now, if you see this question, they are saying, with regard to the Constitution of India, which one of the following statement is not correct? It is not correct. Which of the following is not correct? They are asking. Okay. So let's study one by one. The words socialist and secular were not originally part of the Constitution. Is it correct? Yes. That means the socialist and secular word were not originally the part of constitution. This is correct, because original constitution, which was commenced in 1950, didn't have these words, right? And they were added in 1976. So this statement is correct. Okay. But they are asking which is not correct, right? Then the preamble states the objects of the Constitution of India. Indeed, yes, because the objectives resolution we had, the Jawaharlal Nehru had introduced, in which shows the objectives and the philosophy of the constitution, and the preamble is nothing but a modified version of that objectives resolution only. That's why indeed it shows the objects of the Constitution of India. Then they are asking that whether preamble is enforceable in court of law. And D is asking, the republic refers to the people as the source of all authority under the constitution. Yes, in both systems, republic and democracy, we have all seen that the people are ultimately the ultimate source of power, right? So only one statement which seems incorrect in this is option C, because I just told you that preamble is not enforceable in court of law. Preamble is non-enforceable, or you can also say non-justiciable, right? So that's why C should be the answer. That means C is not correct, because preamble is not enforceable, right? Done. Okay. So students, with this, we are done with the concept of Constituent Assembly and making of the Constitution. Next, very important and interesting topic is that the salient features of Indian Constitution, which is very important. And based on these salient features, you will get to know more about the Constitution of India, and this will also help you in the written examination. That we will discuss in our next lecture. Till then, have a good day. Take care. Done.